Hello, folks, and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we are continuing to push forward to another offseason together. As always, you can always follow our 100% free 24/7 boots on the ground coverage of the Jacksonville Jaguars each and every day when you follow us on social media such as Facebook or Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. Welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about three things that we learned about the Jaguars over the course of the offseason program. Now, we went to, I believe we counted the other day, Jaguars have had about 15 offseason practices between rookie minicamp, between OTAs, and then between mandatory veteran minicamp earlier in the week. So, after going to, I believe, 7 of those practices, we obviously took in quite a few things. And to me, these are the three biggest things that we learned at Jacksonville Jaguars offseason program practices. The first one, I think, has to be that, to me, there's a very real chance that Jordan Lewis is technically the starting corner opposite Tyson Campbell. I think that, Jaguars have a variety of options at that cornerback spot. As we've discussed, you have Jordan Lewis for when the offense is in base personnel, and he, of course, can move inside on third down. You have Buster Brown, who we mentioned yesterday has been one of the top performers of the entire offseason. In my opinion, has done a lot to really boost his stock to potentially even a starting role in Anthony Campanile's defense. And then you have Jarrian Jones, who third-round pick last season, played really well, especially down the stretch. Looked like a playmaker and potential guy you can maybe build some in the secondary around. And finally, you, of course, have the number 2 overall pick and already one of the most, I'd say, popular players in the NFL, and Travis Hunter, who, by the way, it looks like is already inspiring a little bit of a domino effect. You saw Bo Melton practice at cornerback for the Packers early in the week. He's obviously traditionally been a wide receiver throughout his career. So the big question is, who will start opposite Tyson Campbell? 4 different options. I firmly believe, after watching the offseason program, that Jordan Lewis is their second best defensive back. And Travis Hunter obviously can make an argument for that. I just haven't seen him enough on defense. I think I've seen him practice one whole day on defense and then also practice for a period on defense on the last day of minicamp. So, and while he's been impressive there, I'd say almost even more so in that receiver, there is still obviously a lot of evaluation that has to still take place. Jordan Lewis, meanwhile, saw him at cornerback every single time. Made a lot of plays throughout the offseason, really challenged, the Jaguars' better receivers, Hunter, Brian Thomas, De'Ami Brown, Parker Washington. And he just was a guy who the offense was consistently having issues going at. And we already know he has versatility. While he was primarily a nickel defender for the Dallas Cowboys, he has played on the outside for them. So if I had to guess today what it looks like, I do think he starts opposite Tyson Campbell and moves inside when offenses go into 3 wide receiver formations, which, of course, is more or less the norm, but it's not on every single given down. What we also learned, secondly, at the Jaguars offseason programs, they did not think much of their pass rush. They obviously have 2 franchise stalwarts and Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, who are one of the best pass rushing duos in the NFL. Everything they've said and everything we've heard at Jaguars on SI from people inside the building, people new to the team, is that they absolutely love both Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker. Are over the moon with the guys. And it's easy to see why. two of the hardest working players on the team, two of the most productive players on the team, two leaders of the team, and playing one of the most important positions in all football. So the Jaguars clearly liked what they have in their starting duo in Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. But since the draft ended, they signed Emmanuel Ogbah, they signed DeJuan Smoot, and they signed Dennis Gardeck. And they signed the latter two after about 9 to 10 OTA practices. So they saw their pass rush depth. Maybe not a full extended look because they saw it without pads, but they saw what their pass rush depth beyond the top two guys looks like. And it looked like what it did last year. And Miles Cole, you see Abdullah, some undrafted free agents, etc. Making those three moves, in my opinion, was simply a sign of them saying, we recognize this is a need. We recognize that during the NFL draft, there wasn't perhaps a proper chance to take advantage of, I'd say, one of the teams what looked like biggest needs. I think they wanted to at certain spots and things just didn't fall right. So after seeing it during the first little bit of the offseason program, they clearly realized that they needed to add to it. They needed to give themselves waves of pass rushers. And, you know, I have a 53 roster projection coming out after the offseason that comes out today on Sunday. And when I look at the edge room, to me, just on paper and depth-wise, the best Jaguars edge room I've covered. And I'd argue even better than 2017. Because, yeah, you had Calais Campbell. You had Yannick Ngakoue, two really good players. You had Dante Fowler. But I think there's more depth on this one. And I think you have guys in Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker who are just as good, if not better, than the top players from that defensive line. All right, finally, the final lesson that we learned during the Jaguars offseason program, they are going to split the ball up between a lot of players. There was not, I'd say, past Jaguars offseason practices, 2023, you knew they were going to feed the ball to Calvin Ridley. 2022, you knew Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. They obviously gave their top guys the ball a good amount during this year's offseason program. But I'd say it was very clear that they spread the ball a lot. Brian Thomas Jr. got more than his share, obviously. But I wouldn't say absolutely dominated targets. You saw a lot of De'Ami Brown. You saw a lot of Travis Hunter. You saw a lot of Parker Washington. You saw a lot of Brenton Strange. You saw even a lot of Joshua Cephas, Johnny Munt, Hunter Long. I saw the running backs sprinkled in quite a bit. And when I say sprinkled in, obviously the running backs are, influential in the offense. But by sprinkled throughout, I mean all four running backs being used with the starting guys in some capacity. I think the different situations they put guys in, the different kind of combinations that they had really set the tone for what they were doing in the offseason. And I think it's an offense that, at least based on the other looks of it, is definitely going to spread the ball around. And that hasn't really been a Jaguars MO, in a while. I think even in 2022, you had guys with some similar production. I think it was still tilted a little bit more Kirk and Ingram. I really get the sense that this offense, you're going to see guys have random big games. You're going to see a Johnny Munt game, in my opinion, a Parker Washington game, De'Ami Brown games. And to me, that's what an offense should be. You should be multifaceted. You should be layered. You should be able to do things to keep the defense on its toes and away from quickly figuring out what you're doing on any given play. And that's obviously been an issue in past seasons. The Calvin Ridley season, teams are just stuffing Calvin Ridley on the outside and when he went vertically because they knew that's what the Jaguars wanted to go. So I think this offense definitely looks like one that's set to spread the ball around. And Trevor Lawrence, I think, is set to be a point guard more this season than maybe in past seasons in his Jacksonville Jaguars career. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. My name is John Shipley. Please give us a follow, like, subscription, whatever you got to do when you find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other podcast platforms at the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. You can also find us at YouTube on Sports Videos on SI.